Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases.
Absolutely, it's great to be here.
And before we jump in, you can go to SpeakDuo.com to meet new people from around the world who are practicing English on video calls to become more confident with their English speaking abilities. Today's content actually comes directly from a SpeakDuo lesson.
Right, which is fantastic because today we're doing a deep dive into something that so many advanced learners struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, you can have perfect grammar, but still feel totally lost in a corporate meeting.
Exactly. Like, you know the words, but the real meaning is hidden behind this secret workplace code.
Right. So we are jumping straight into a masterclass on 15 advanced idioms to crack that code. But we do have some ground rules for this deep dive, right?
Right, we do. We're not just going to sit here and read textbook definitions to you.
No, that would be boring.
Right. We're focusing heavily on the nuance. So, how do these idioms actually differ from the simpler phrases you might already be using?
Because it's all about practical application, isn't it?
Exactly. By the end of this, you'll know how to confidently use these with your boss, your colleagues, or, to really impress an examiner during an IELTS speaking exam.
So let's start with our first theme, which is surviving the daily grind in professional life.
A great place to start.
Right, because when you first join a company, you usually need time to just understand how things work. And the phrase for this is to know the ropes.
To know the ropes, yes, meaning to be experienced and familiar with how a specific task or job is done.
But, I mean, why wouldn't I just tell my new manager that I know my stuff, like after a month of onboarding?
Well, you could, but it really doesn't mean the same thing. And this is where that nuance is so crucial.
Okay, how so?
If you say someone knows their stuff, you're talking about intellectual or factual knowledge. Like an accountant knows their stuff when it comes to tax law.
Oh, I see.
But knowing the ropes is entirely physical or procedural. It's about the environment. It's knowing the internal workflows or navigating the software or knowing exactly which IT person you have to bribe with coffee to get your laptop fixed.
Right. Which makes total sense if you look at the origin. It's a nautical term, right?
It is, yeah.
Like literally learning the complex rigging and the ropes of a sailing ship. So you could read 10 books on sailing and know your stuff, but you definitely don't know the ropes until you're on the deck in a storm.
That is a perfect analogy. You have to physically experience it. So you tell your boss you know the ropes when you're finally ready to, say, guide the new hires through the actual office procedures.
Right. But before you actually know the ropes, you're usually starting the very bottom of the food chain.
Very true.
And there is a highly specific kind of demeaning phrase for that, which is to be a general dog's body.
Ah, yes. To be a general dog's body.
Meaning you're forced to do all the boring, completely unglamorous tasks for other people.
And the contrast I really want you to focus on here is the word assistant.
Okay.
Because being an assistant is just a neutral professional job title. It goes on your resume.
Right.
But feeling like a general dog's body is super colloquial. It captures this really exhausting feeling of just doing menial chores.
Like you're not even a person, just a tool.
Exactly. And fun fact, dog's body was actually 19th century British Royal Navy slang for dried peas boiled in a cloth.
Wait, really? Boiled peas?
Yes. It was this incredibly cheap, unglamorous meal. So today, if you use it, you're basically saying you feel like the cheapest, lowest thing on the ship.
Wow, that paints a picture. So if you're, venting to a colleague, you wouldn't say, oh, I was an assistant at the corporate event. You'd complain that you were treated like a general dog's body because you spent 10 hours making coffee and fetching dry cleaning.
Spot on. You're doing the grunt work. Which actually leads right into our next phrase. Because doing all that grunt work means you'll eventually be up to one's neck in something.
Up to one's neck in something. Meaning extremely overwhelmed by work or massive problems. But honestly, I just say, I'm busy. Why is this better?
Because just saying I'm busy is totally factual. It just means your calendar is full.
True, yeah.
But being up to your neck provides this visceral, physical sensation of drowning.
Oh, like the water is rising.
Exactly. The water, or the paperwork, is literally rising up to your chin. So imagine your manager asks for a last-minute meeting. If you just say, hey, I'm busy, they might still push you to do it. But if you say, I'd love to help, but it's tax season and I am up to my neck in client calls, it completely shifts the tone.
It's a hard boundary.
It really does. It commands immediate respect because it communicates severe overwhelm.
Which brings us to the ultimate descriptor for the modern working world, right? The rat race.
Ah, the rat race.
Yeah.
The highly competitive, daily struggle for success and material comforts.
So how is that psychologically different from just, having a career path?
Well, a career path implies this logical, rewarding progression toward a goal.
Right, like stepping stones.
Exactly. But the rat race implies a maze. You are just blindly running, totally exhausted, in this endless competition that is ultimately kind of meaningless.
Yeah, because even if you win the rat race, you're still just a rat in a maze.
Exactly. And IELTS examiners absolutely love this phrase for a Part 2 response.
Ooh, how to use it there?
If you're asked to describe someone who made a major life change, you could say they left the 70-hour corporate finance rat race to move to a quiet coastal village.
Oh, that's good. It paints a really vivid picture.
It shows high-level vocabulary instantly.
Okay, so let's say you survive the rat race, which brings us to our second theme: ambition, value, and opportunity.
Right, stepping up.
Sometimes you spot a sudden trend and you want to cash in on something, meaning to gain a financial or personal advantage from a situation. Now, is this just a fancy way of saying making a profit?
Not quite. Making a profit is just the standard, ongoing process of running a business.
Okay.
To cash in on something implies real opportunism. You are leveraging a highly specific, temporary event.
Like a one-off thing.
Exactly. You wouldn't say a bakery cashes in on selling bread every single Tuesday. But you might tell your colleagues about how local businesses really cashed in on a weekend music festival.
Like selling $20 raincoats when it starts pouring on the crowd.
Precisely. They saw a sudden wave and they rode it.
And I guess to seize those kinds of rare opportunities, you really have to be dead set on something.
Yes, meaning absolutely determined to achieve a specific goal.
But how is being dead set on something different from just really wanting to do it?
Well, a desire, even a really strong one, can still be flexible.
Right.
If you are dead set on something, it means your determination is unwavering. It's almost stubborn. The decision is final.
So at work, you might tell a manager that you are dead set on finishing a professional course this year to improve your job prospects.
Exactly. It tells your boss that no amount of extra weekend work or distractions will stop you.
But sometimes that level of ambition comes at a painful cost, which leads to, honestly, one of my favorite visual idioms: to pay through the nose for something.
It is a great one.
To pay an excessively high price for an item or service. But why the nose? Is there a historical reason for this?
There actually is a fascinating legend behind it. It's believed to originate from the 9th century when the Irish were conquered by the Danes.
Oh, wow, going way back.
Yeah, and the Danes imposed this extremely heavy tax. The myth goes that if you didn't pay it, they would quite literally slit your nose.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that definitely elevates it beyond just saying something is expensive.
Right, because expensive is just a passive adjective. It just describes the item.
Yeah.
But paying through the nose is the painful, active experience of overpaying, usually because bad circumstances forced you to.
That makes it a fantastic phrase for IELTS, actually.
Absolutely. You could explain why you had to pay through the nose for a same-day delivery or maybe a last-minute airport taxi at 3 in the morning.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Definitely.
So as you forcefully navigate all these ambitions, you inevitably run into social friction. Which brings us to section 3, social boundaries.
This is where things get tricky.
Yeah, like when someone is getting way too involved in your business, they like to poke one's nose into something, meaning unnecessarily interfering in someone else's private business.
Which is very different from just being curious.
Right, but let me push back a bit here. In the source material we looked at, there's an example of someone saying they poke their nose into friends' travel plans because they just enjoy helping with logistics. Can this actually be a positive thing?
That's a really great question. Inherently poking your nose into something is negative.
Right, it feels invasive.
It is. If you complain to a coworker that someone pokes their nose into other teams' logistical plans, that's an accusation.
So why the travel plan example?
Because when you apply it to yourself, it becomes a self-deprecating joke.
Oh, I see.
You're giving a conversational wink. You're acknowledging, hey, I know I'm being a bit nosy, but I'm doing it because I want to help. It softens the intrusion completely.
That makes total sense. Now, on the flip side of being intrusive, sometimes people are way too protective, and that is to mollycoddle someone.
To mollycoddle, yes, meaning to treat someone far too carefully and overprotect them.
I have to ask, does molly have some historical slang meaning?
It does. In the 18th and 19th centuries, a molly was a derogatory term for an effeminate man.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and to coddle meant to gently boil or parboil something like an egg, so you're treating it very delicately. Over time, it merged to mean protecting someone so much that they actually become weak.
So how does that differ from just spoiling someone, like spoiling a kid?
Spoiling is usually about giving too many material things. Mollycoddling is specifically about overly protecting someone from failure or hardship.
So in the workplace, you might tell a supervisor that they tend to mollycoddle the trainees.
Right, which hinders their independence. Because if you hover over them, they never learn to fix their own mistakes.
Speaking of mistakes, sometimes managers do the exact opposite of mollycoddling and decide to turn a blind eye to something, meaning deliberately ignoring a bad behavior or a negative situation.
Key word there is deliberately.
Right, so if I accidentally miss a typo in a report, I didn't turn a blind eye to it.
No, because you just didn't notice it. Turning a blind eye is an active, intentional choice to look the other way.
Where does that one come from?
It actually comes from the British naval hero Lord Nelson. During a battle, his commander signaled him to retreat using flags. But Nelson, who was actually blind in one eye, supposedly put his telescope up to his blind eye and said, "I really do not see the signal," and just continued his attack.
Wow, I had no idea. That perfectly illustrates the intentionality of it.
It really does.
So a manager might explain to their boss that they turned a blind eye to minor system errors to keep the team's morale high while they were learning?
Exactly. It's a calculated choice to ignore something. But, when the situation goes too far, you can't ignore it.
Right, which leads to our next phrase. To take exception to something, meaning to feel deeply offended by or strongly disagree with a remark or action.
And this is very different from simply disliking something.
Oh.
Disliking is just a preference. To take exception is a formal, deeply felt offense that almost always prompts a response or a defense.
Okay, so if a manager implies in a public meeting that you lack commitment, you don't just dislike it.
No, you take exception to it. You'd probably address that manager directly in private after taking exception to that harsh review.
Right. And to avoid that kind of friction in the first place, you need clear communication, which kicks off our fourth section. Sometimes you just have to be painfully clear, which is when you spell something out for someone.
Yes. To explain something extremely clearly and in great detail.
I always worry this sounds a bit condescending, though, you know?
It definitely can be, which is why the context matters. Standard explaining is just a normal exchange of information.
Right.
When you spell it out, you're breaking it down step by step, almost letter by letter. You usually do this because the listener is really struggling or the stakes are so high that no ambiguity is allowed.
Like detailing safety rules for new volunteers at a construction site. You spell it out so nothing is left to assumption.
Exactly. And if they still seem like they might wander into a dangerous area, you might have to warn someone off.
To warn someone off, meaning to strongly tell someone to stay away from a dangerous or bad situation. But isn't this just advising against something?
Oh, that's a dangerous mistake to make it work.
Really?
Advising against something is a mild, polite suggestion. Warning someone off is an urgent, forceful deterrent.
So if a colleague warns you off a project, they are basically telling you it's toxic.
Yes, stay away. In an IELTS test, you might describe a time a guide warned visitors off an unstable trail during heavy rain. It's not a suggestion. It's a command for your safety.
Because if you don't warn them off, you might accidentally land someone in trouble.
Which is our next phrase.
Meaning to accidentally cause someone to face a difficult situation. So is this like corporate sabotage?
Actually, it's the exact opposite. Sabotage is intentional harm. Landing someone in trouble is totally accidental. You didn't mean to do it, but the consequence was harmful anyway.
Oh, I see. Like if you apologize to your team because you gave the wrong directions and that landed a colleague in trouble for being late to a client meeting.
Exactly. It's the accidental nature of it.
Okay, our final idiom before the quiz is one that just has this brilliant atmosphere to it. To rattle around in somewhere.
I love this one.
It means to live in or use a space that feels too large and empty.
The beauty of this phrase is the emotional weight it carries. If you just say, "I live in a big house," that's just a factual statement about square footage.
Right.
But saying you rattle around in it captures this echoing, almost lonely feeling of emptiness, like a single pill shaking inside a large bottle.
Wow, that echoing feeling is so visceral. It's perfect for an IELTS response about family, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Like describing how your parents rattled around in their big house for months after the children moved out.
Precisely. It gives the examiner an emotion, not just a flat fact.
All right. Well, it is time to put all this context to the test with the superbly said quiz.
Let's do it.
So here's how this works. I'm going to read a question and give you option A, option B, and option C. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer before we reveal it. Ready?
Ready.
Question 1. Which sentence uses the idiomatic phrase to mollycoddle someone correctly based on context? Option A. The professional medical care provider was instructed to mollycoddle the injured limb during the orthopedic recovery session. Option B. The deeply frustrated young retail clerk aggressively managed to completely drop a white line. And option C, instead of allowing the trainees to learn from their mistakes, the supervisor tended to mollycoddle them, which hindered their independence. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is option C. To mollycoddle someone means to overprotect them from failure. Remember our workplace example. A supervisor who mollycoddles trainees stops them from developing their own independence.
Perfect. Question 2. Select the context where the phrase to pay through the nose for something is most appropriately used figuratively. Option A. Because we booked our flights just hours before departure during peak holiday season, we had to pay through the nose for our tickets. Option B. The professional plastic surgery consultant was instructed to pay through the nose for the cosmetic rhinoplasty procedure. And option C. The incredibly clumsy warehouse inventory clerk accidentally managed to quickly buy some large systems. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is option A. To pay through the nose for something means to pay an excessively high price. Just like our IELTS example of paying through the nose for a last-minute airport taxi, booking flights hours before departure will definitely cost you a painful amount.
Ouch. Yes, it will. Question 3. In which situation does someone accurately utilize the advanced phrase to know the ropes contextually? Option A. The professional mountain climbing expedition instructor was instructed to know the ropes before scaling the rock face. Option B. After working in the compliance department for nearly 3 years, she really knows the ropes and can resolve system errors effortlessly. And option C. The completely terrified young wilderness traveler unexpectedly noticed an exceptionally massive heavy tool chest. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option B. To know the ropes means to be experienced and familiar with procedures. Option A is a literal use of actual ropes, but we want the figurative workplace meaning. Someone who knows the ropes can resolve errors effortlessly because they really know the environment.
Exactly. Question 4. Which response best demonstrates the advanced phrase to be a general dog's body, figuratively? Option A. During my first few months at the television production studio, I was treated like a general dog's body, handling everything from coffee runs to file archiving. Option B. The professional veterinary clinic assistant was instructed to be a general dog's body for the animal rescue shelter operations. And option C, the incredibly clumsy warehouse inventory clerk accidentally managed to quickly catch that white balance. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
It is option A. To be a general dog's body captures that demeaning feeling of being stuck doing unglamorous chores. Just like complaining about picking up dry cleaning, the person at the TV studio doing coffee runs is definitely acting as the general dog's body.
All right, question 5. How would a professional accurately use the phrase to cash in on something contextually? Option A. The professional bank teller cashier was instructed to cash in on something at the currency exchange counter. Option B. The completely confused amateur theater group unexpectedly decided to proudly paint a clean frame. And option C. The smart local restaurant owners managed to cash in on the music festival by offering themed menus and extended evening hours. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option C. To cash in on something is about opportunistically leveraging a temporary event for a real advantage, exactly like our earlier example of businesses cashing in on a weekend music festival crowd.
Spot on. Question 6. Which scenario perfectly illustrates the meaning of the phrase to take exception to something contextually? Option A. The professional legal courtroom exception specialist was instructed to take exception to the procedural ruling during the trial. Option B. She took strong exception to the manager's public remark implying she lacked commitment, and she addressed it directly in private. And option C. The incredibly clumsy hotel maintenance worker accidentally managed to completely drop that red tray. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
That would be option B. To take exception to something means to feel deeply offended by a remark. It goes way beyond a simple preference, prompting a formal defense, much like addressing a harsh review of your commitment.
Question 7. Which sentence accurately utilizes the advanced phrase, the rat race, contextually? Option A. After spending a decade working 70-hour weeks in corporate finance, he finally decided to escape the rat race and move to a quiet coastal village. Option B, the professional laboratory animal science researcher was instructed to observe the rat race during the maze experiment. And option C, the deeply confused young kitchen assistant accidentally managed to quickly slice a fresh piece of rice. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is option A. The rat race refers to the exhausting, meaningless competition of modern work life. Option B is completely literal, but option A perfectly mirrors our IELTS example of abandoning a corporate finance job for a coastal village.
And finally, question 8. Which of the following statements correctly uses to turn a blind eye to something? Option A, the professional optometrist was instructed to turn a blind eye to something during the patient's vision test. Option B, a manager explained to their boss that they turned a blind eye to minor system errors to keep team morale high. And option C, the incredibly confused office worker accidentally managed to turn a blind eye to a green stapler. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option B. To turn a blind eye to something is the deliberate choice to ignore a negative situation. Just like we discussed with Lord Nelson, a manager might turn a blind eye to small mistakes to protect their team rather than literally closing their physical eyes.
Fantastic. Huge congratulations to you for completing this deep dive into the quiz and really expanding your advanced vocabulary today.
Absolutely well done. You now have the nuance to use all of these confidently. But before you go, I do want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Oh, what's that?
Think about how many of the idioms we explored for our daily life, like the rat race, or being up to our necks, or being treated like a general dog's body, or having to pay through the nose. All of these reflect a society that historically felt overworked, overwhelmed, and highly stressed.
That is so true.
Right. So it raises a fascinating psychological question. Does our language actually shape our daily stress by giving it such vivid imagery? Or does it merely reflect the reality we're already living? The next time you find yourself using one of these phrases at work, take a moment to consider what it says about modern corporate culture.
Wow, that is a really brilliant thing to ponder. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into superbly said English phrases. We'll catch you next time.
Until next time, keep practicing.